I'm proud to announce that I will be building my very first custom PC, built by me 100%. I did order all the parts of this PC build. I have never built a PC before, so if you're looking for professional advice, go to a different channel. But if you guys are going for the experience with me as a new guy or someone who has never built a PC or is very just interested in building a PC, I watched about 50 YouTube videos on how to build a PC, so I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to build it. But before I do get into the actual build, I'll show you guys the parts that I've ordered from newegg.com, which is like the PC place where you buy all your parts and stuff to build. Let's first start off with the CPU, which is the brain of the computer. So here I have a Intel Core i7-12700k. So if you have any kind of box with K labeled on it, that means it's not going to come with a cooler. You have to buy an aftermarket cooler. Next is the motherboard. So this is an Asus Prime B660 Plus D4. So originally I did have this with the palette that I unboxed from Liquidations, but they had damaged pins, so I had to get a brand new one. I threw out the other ones. Next is a CPU cooler, which is an aftermarket one. So I got a Thermaltake Toughair 310, which is about 60 bucks. Next, after that, we have the power supply. So for the power supply, I got a EVGA SuperNova 750 G5. It could go up to 750 watts, fully modular, Ego mode. Next is the graphic card. So for the graphic card, I got a MSI Geforce GTX 1050 Ti. For the solid state drive, also known as SSD, I got a 1TB Crucial P2. For the RAM or for the memory, I got 2 sticks of 16. So Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro 32 gigabytes, DD4 SD RAM. For the case or for the tower, I got a Fractal Design ATX mid tower. So this case I got from Liquidations, which I don't know if it's 100% brand new, but it was saying that it was damaged, but we'll find out once we start putting everything in. Once everything is put in and we test it, we're gonna make sure that it is actually working, or if it's not. Those are all the parts. If anyone's looking to buy any of these parts, I will put them in the link description below, so go ahead and check it out. But let's just get into the build. So take the motherboard, take the CPU, take all the parts that go into the motherboard, so like the memory, the SSD, put them into the motherboard, and then from the motherboard, put them into the case. Let's start off with the CPU and the motherboard. Most important parts of this build. If you guys don't understand anything that I'm saying, make sure you go online or go to the manuals that they give you and make sure that you go onto their manual instructions for your motherboard and make sure that everything that you're looking at is exactly how it's supposed to be. Also, make sure you know which cables go in, do some pre-planning. Take your time, this is the most important part. So the first thing you want to do is first pull this lever off over here. It's like a spring load, you pull it up, push it to the side, and then lift this cover over the area where your CPU is going to come in. Next, you want to take off this plastic cover because you're not going to need it. So this plastic cover is only for storage, so that way you don't damage any of the CPU pins that are over here. So this is the CPU, so it is in a plastic cover. So you do not want to touch any of these pins over here once you start taking it out. So to make sure you don't touch any of these pins, flip it over like this and put this CPU on a flat surface like your table or anywhere like that. Pull off the plastic, grab it by the green on the side of the CPU, and once you do, there's a little arrow in the corner of the CPU. You probably can't see it on camera. So that corner of the CPU is going right over here, where there's a little arrow over there next to the outside of the cover of the CPU. It's like this. Drop this over. What you want to do is pull the arm over and just drop it down. Make sure that the connection is right, and that's how you put your CPU in. Next up is the bracket and the screws. So the bracket is going to go on the back of the motherboard. So to do so, first poke the screws through all the black parts of this CPU bracket. Go to the back of the motherboard. You're gonna find the 4 holes and just stick the screws through the holes, and it should fit in very nicely, just like that. And now you have all 4 screws sticking out of the motherboard. The next part that you're going to need is 4 pieces like this. They're like long, no niches, no nothing in them, just like long 4 black pieces that you're going to put on top of the screws. Just put them on top, just like that. Going back into your parts case, take out the metal piece, and what you're going to do now is you're going to put this piece on top of the metal, or on top of the screws now. So essentially the black pieces that we put on earlier are basically the lifters that are going to keep the CPU cooler upward. So these pieces have a screw in on top like this, and that is going to get screwed on top of the CPU mount, or the metal part. So for the CPU mount, just screw it on top. And this is going to hold the bracket in from moving. And make sure you go around tightening them, make sure that they're all tight, so that way nothing comes loose later on, just like that. So now we have all the brackets in. Next you got to put in the thermal paste. So in the actual part, it does come with some thermal paste. I do not have extras because this is a one-time build, so they bring in like a little bit of thermal paste. I think this is just going to be just enough to put it on top. Once you put the thermal paste on, you're going to put the fan on top, or the cooler, which is this part, right on top of it, just like that. And it also says peel off before putting it on top, so make sure you actually peel off the plastic part before you actually put it on top. This is my first time putting thermal paste. Hopefully it'll be the last. So just slowly, just like that, just do an X, dots. Perfect. Perfect job of a noob. And I'm just gonna spread it out a little bit, just because I don't want to. For all the people that say, oh my god, it's so ugly. Yeah, well, guess how many times I've done this? Once, and it's right now. So that's pretty even, I would think. So once we have that, take your big giant metal piece that's like this, put it on top. Alright, good. Nothing has happened, nothing exploded yet, so we're good for now. Once we turn it on, it might be a different story. Alright, so next we put this metal piece underneath, over here, gently put it over. And this piece is going to get screwed into the side of the bracket. So it's going to fit in very nicely. It's not even, so that means I got to actually move the coolant a little bit. So, or I have to just, no, I have to move the coolant a little bit so it could line up. So next, take a screwdriver. I have this little tech screwdriver over here, which is perfect size for basic screws. Alright, so go over here, put it in one side, then go to the other side, put that one in, make sure it lines up. Right there, yes, 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 yes. So it fits in the bracket. Tying this piece down. My only fear now is that maybe the CPU, I hope the thermal paste didn't actually like spread around into the CPU. I hope not. We'll find out once we turn it on. So you're going to need these screws. Next, what we're going to do is mount the brackets onto the fan. So go to the back of the fan and take the black pieces from the parts baggie. Put the side with the holes on top and line them up like this. Make sure that the fan is facing upward or downward, whichever way you need it. So this way I'm pushing it like this, putting it like this. So I'm gonna put this is upward because you could look at the label and see which way is up and down. So I'm gonna put it just like that. I don't think it matters, but just in case, you know, you don't want to go back and redo it. So next you're going to take the threaded screws that I showed earlier and just start screwing them into the holes of the fan, just like that. Don't over tighten them, because then you might actually break the actual plastic piece. Just enough when you hear that click from the plastic, then that is it. You don't want to go over, and make sure that it's going in right. Don't make sure it's not cross threading or actually going in crooked. We have the brackets mounted on this fan. Now we have to mount the fan with the brackets on top of the radiator. So I'm gonna bring back the motherboard. All right, because you don't want the CPU fan too close to the RAM sticks. So AIO pump, and the other one's a CPU fan. So make sure you put the CPU fan in the CPU. You're not going to use AIO because I'm not using a water pump. Next up is the actual RAMs. The RAM is the easiest part to install. You just plug it in. I did that with the DELL 3668. So easy. Just make sure you know which side you're actually plugging into. Long side with long, short with short. And also, it should be labeled AB or BA or something like that on the actual motherboard. So you want to match up which ones you're going to put in. So you're going to pull these tabs off. Alright, so cool. So you only pull off these tabs on the side before putting in the RAM. So you're going to, and just like that, you just push it in as tight as possible, and the lock should get locked. Just like that. Just push it in, make sure it's snapped in. So next we're going to put in the Crucial SSD. So for the Crucial SSD, we need to look for the PCI. Alright, so for the SSD, I'm going to take this cover off. Honestly, with the order that I'm doing this, because I actually don't know the specs of this CPU or this motherboard, because I'm putting like the fan on top, which I think it should have went last, because now it's difficult to take out these screws. Plugged in the SSD, you hear a little click. So you take off the little like plastic off it, and then you just put it on top and line up the screws and screw it back in, which is not really that difficult. Done with the motherboard. Now we're actually going to put the motherboard into the actual case and start working on the actual case. Alright, so here we have the power supply. So for the power supply, what I'm going to do is, alright, so I gotta put it from this side in this way. And you're gonna have 4 screws in the back that you gotta mount on. The 4 screws come with the actual case. So here we have the 4 screws. The 4 screws, there are going to be hex side from the top, like that. And they're just threaded just like any other screw. First put in the screws, just like this. And now the power supply is in. And you're going to tighten all those other screws that you put in. Just like that. Alright, so now we have the power supply in. Now we're going to put in the actual motherboard. So this is where I'm going to flip the actual case facing downward like this, like that. So it's going to be much more easier to put in the power supply or the motherboard. What we need to do is first take this piece from motherboard and put him in here as the cover. And also, alright, so now we have to put in the standoffs. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the screws and start putting them up. The middle piece should be lined up with the motherboard. It's perfectly flush. You just push in the motherboard inside. And now we're going to take the screws, start putting them into the corners, and start tightening down the motherboard to the actual case. So we're just going to take the 8 screws for the standoffs. So here we got the screws. It's 8 screws. Pretty short screws. You'll probably find them, but they're pan heads. But let's just get started with actually putting these in. It's not that hard. And just like that, we just installed the motherboard into the actual case. Like I mentioned before, I did not run the cables. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to run the cables from the power supply into the motherboard. All the cables do come with the actual power supply, so you do not have to buy extra cables. So the only cables that you're probably going to need is just these cables. They come in one bunch. This is going to be the ATX power supply, CPU, and like other stuff like that. So it's like a big giant cable like this one. You're just going to plug that into the power supply. So the side that says PSU is the side you're going to plug into the actual power supply, because that's what PSU stands for, PS power supply unit. Just like that. You have one cable ran into the motherboard. Next up is a 12 volt. So the 12 volt goes right in there. So there's like a little 8 pin over there. Motherboard's already been ran into here. Of course, it's not a perfect job, it's not a professional job, but hopefully it just works. All right, so this is the CPU cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this side into the power supply, and these two sides, which are split, I'm going to put into the ATX, and it should work, hopefully. So on the power supply, you could probably see on the bottom, on the other side under these cables, there is a CPU 1. So that's where I'm going to plug in the 8-pin to route this cable from the bottom all the way to the top, unlike our motherboard cable. So we have the cable here, pull it through, and it should be working perfectly. So I had to turn off my camera because I had to find out which cables go where for these cables. So here you have the power switches and the LEDs which light up the front of the panel, but I couldn't see which cable goes where. So what I had to do was go through the instruction manual and see which ones. So here you could probably see you have the power switch goes first, then the LED power minus over here, then the LED plus, and then underneath is the other cables. I'll put a screenshot of the cable so you guys can see for yourself which ones I'm talking about. So you can see this is the instruction. So this is the 16, the system panel header. So you can see that I had to plug in the LED plus minus, the HD LED plus, and then the reset panel. So that goes for that. Then the audio I put over here, and then the USB cable goes over here, and the last one is like this big blue cable that I was showing earlier, which goes over here underneath the power supply because it's the only one that actually fitted, so I'm assuming that's where it goes. It says UG32G1. Next up, what we gotta do is run these cables for the fans. So hopefully we could just put the fans where they gotta go. So you can see that there's a cha underscore fan over here. There should be another one somewhere nearby. So I'm gonna put the camera back onto the tripod and try and continue with this build. Make sure that the tab from the fan is pointing the right way, so that way you could just snap it in to make sure that it is the right way. So that way you don't have problems later on. We got that. All we need now is the graphics card, and to plug in the graphics card into the motherboard, and for him the power supply directly into the motherboard as well. I think that should be all the cables that we had to run. There's the graphics card. So before you actually do, you have to actually remove this plastic off here, so that way it doesn't stop the fan from spinning, with the metal side facing out to the outside. But before that, we also have to make a hole into the actual panel over here. You got to take out two of the bottom pieces. So you got to take out the two from the bottom, not the very bottom, but 2 and 3 from the bottom. So just like this, and then just plug it in. It should snap in on the corner over here. And because it's snapped in, I should be able to tighten it with a screw over here. Again, I know it's hard to see because I don't have a lot of light. Oh crap, almost destroyed this GPU. The power supply to the actual GPU, so that way it could get power so we could turn it on. So the power supply cable goes into here in the corner. What I have here is an 8-pin to a, so this is a 6-pin and a 2-pin. I'm only going to use the 6-pin and plug it into here, just like that. Leave the 2 out here, just like that. You could tape it off or whatever you want to do. Plug this cable into the VGA one because I'm an idiot and I didn't know that it has to be a certain one. So VGA means that it's for the video graphics card. So just like that, everything's plugged in. We're good. We're good on this. We just got to plug in the power supply cable back in. So we're going to start with the small one because it's the easiest one to plug in. So we're going to plug it in like this. All right, so everything is plugged in. I hope, I don't know for 100% sure, but it is looking like all the parts are already put in. The only thing we're going to do now is we're actually going to plug it in and see if it actually works. The only thing I got to do now is also I have to put in the back the power cable, and hopefully nothing blows up. So I plugged the PC into a GFCI just in case something does go wrong. Now I'm turning it on. Alright, power supply is on. Looks like nothing is going bad. I don't know if I should push the power button on. Alright, everything works. Everything works the way it's supposed to. Everything is lit up. Just look at that beauty. Just look at that. Fans are working, so that's a good thing. Graphics card is lighting up, so that's a good thing. This fan is turning, so that's a good thing. And we have the light showing that it's starting working. So everything is working. Power supply is working. I'm just happy that everything works. We're not done yet because we now have to install Windows onto this PC. So let's just turn this off. Man, I was really nervous. When I pushed that power on button, I thought that I was going to blow something up. But everything is working. So if I could do it, then you guys could definitely do it. But we're not finished yet. Let's just go back to programming this and making sure that everything works. Before I do start programming, I have to get rid of all this garbage that's over here, because now that we have everything, I won't say I won't throw it out. I just got to put it in somewhere else, because we don't want all this stuff, you know, cluttered all over the place with instruction manuals and all this extra parts that's over here. So before throwing out all your garbage and your boxes, make sure you go to Asus and MSI's product page so you guys could register your products, so you guys could earn rewards for purchasing their products and using them. Now that we have the PC running, or hopefully running, we haven't checked on screen if it is actually running, but before we do actually get into that, we have to first download Windows 10 or 11 onto this USB to make sure that we installed the Windows before we actually start up the computer with all the programs and whatever on it. So to do that, it's very simple. Just go to Microsoft and have them download it onto your flash drive, and from your flash drive you just plug it into any of the USBs on the PC, go into the computer, and then it automatically installs it into your computer. So let's just do that real quick. It shouldn't take that long. Alright, so this is our final product, which I can't believe it actually works, because when I first turned it on I was really nervous that it was gonna blow up. I've been using this PC for maybe a day already, and it 100% works. I already activated Windows 10. I forgot to mention that if you are going to turn on Windows, because I was having struggles with this, that's why I had to turn off the camera, because I don't know why Windows wasn't turning on or installing on my new PC. It was because when you go on your USB, you have to first actually open up the application for Windows 10. It's going to say how you want to install it. You say custom and all that other stuff. I'm going to put a link in the description for if you want to see how someone else does it. To me, building this PC was almost like landing your first kickflip. Like, this is my first PC build, and I can't believe like it actually 100% works. Like, I can't change the RGB coloring on this RAM. I don't know why, but that doesn't matter. I actually see all the components, like the fans, the RAM, the CPU, everything, the CPU coolant. I can see all of that working on this PC. So I'm happy that everything does work. And if you guys want to see more like videos like this where I'm doing random stuff with gaming, I probably won't build another PC. But if you guys like this video, please subscribe, like, leave a comment below, because that's going to help push this video out if you guys really did enjoy this video. But I'll see you guys for the next video. Peace out, guys.